I don't. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Right. So Christine Sipnowa, chairperson of the Coalition of Kingston Communities, which is an umbrella organization of over 25 community groups, diverse in their interests and concerns, from residents groups to advocacy groups on particular issues. But what they have in common is an interest in accountability and open process at City Hall. And in that spirit, in 2018, we organized a number of in-person all-candidates meetings for districts that didn't have a community organization already organizing one. And we've done that again this time around, but the ones we're organizing for the 2022 election are online, such as this one. So tonight we have the Collins-Bayridge all-candidates meeting, and I'll just flag that it's a busy week with a number of other all-candidates meetings. So I'll just mention them, that tomorrow, Kingstown at 7 p.m. at Central Public School. The same night also, there's a Trillium in-person meeting at the Salvation Army Kingston Citadel on Centenary Drive. There is a Zoom meeting for Pittsburgh at 7 p.m. as well. And then later in the week on the 13th, the Trillium meeting on Zoom. And next week, there's a meeting, an all-candidates meeting with the mayoral candidates. And I'll just note that, and I'll put it in the chat, you can find the details for all these things on the Coalition of Kingston Communities website. Okay, well, enough of those preliminaries. Let me have the honor of introducing our moderator, who will then run the meeting. And our moderator is Elaine Power. She is a professor in the School of Kinesiology and Health Studies, where she teaches courses on social determinants of health, the food system, critical weight studies, and qualitative research methods. She's a co-founder of the Kingston Action Group for Basic Income Guarantee and co-author of The Case for Basic Income, Freedom, Security, Justice, published last year. Elaine lives in Strathcona Park with her 16-year-old and their cat, Daisy, and is grateful to the original owners of her home for the pear tree they planted more than 60 years ago. A nice fact. And I thank you very much, Elaine, for giving up your time to moderate the meeting. And thank you, Lisa, for coming. Thank you, everyone in the audience. Looking forward to the conversation. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Christine. And thank you to you and the coalition for organizing these meetings. I think it's a great contribution to democracy in our city. So thank you. And thank you to Lisa. As those of you in the audience, either live or watching the recording, will know that Lisa is the only candidate who agreed to participate this evening. So thank you, Lisa. We are going to stick to the general format of the meetings that the coalition has organized for the sake of consistency. And so that means that Lisa will have 2 minutes at the beginning to introduce herself and talk about why she decided to run for council. I have a question I'm going to ask her, and then we'll be soliciting questions from the audience. And I have a few up my sleeve in case people are quiet, but we have a fairly small group, but if you wouldn't mind, you could either put questions in the chat. Down at the bottom, you can see the chat box there. You could put your question in there. And if you would please indicate if you're from the district, we'll be giving priority to questioners who live in the district. We'll ask Lisa to give fairly concise answer to the questions so that we have time for lots of questions. You can also raise your hand. The hand is under reactions, and I'll try to keep track of that. So either the chat or the raise your hand function will work. Failing all else, you could turn on your video and wave your hand at me. But I think we have just under an hour, so we'll have lots of time for discussion with Lisa. So with that, I will turn it over to Lisa to give her introduction. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Elaine. And thank you to the Coalition of Kingston Communities for organizing these district meetings. My name is Lisa Osanek, and I've been the city councilor of Collins-Bayridge District for the last 16 years. I decided to run for city council because back in 2005, there was a lot of tree cutting going on. The city didn't have a tree bylaw at the time. I also found out that the forest at the bottom of our street, which I always had thought was conservation land, wasn't, and the developers were trying to expand the urban growth boundary to develop it. So I ran for council, and Kingston now has a tree bylaw. And so far, the urban growth boundary has remained at Collins Creek during this time. I have never considered politics before that. I have a Bachelor of Science from the University of Waterloo and an MBA from Queen's University. I used to be a pharmaceutical drug rep with Pfizer, but since having kids, I've now worked for the Ministry of Health. My son just graduated from Queen's Commerce, and my daughter's in third year at Carleton. My husband's a lawyer and professor at Queen's. My MBA taught me about the importance of customer service. My constituents are my customers. I work for my constituents, and it's my job to try to solve their problems and keep them as happy as I can. I believe in open communication. I send out a district update by email once or twice a month with what's going on in the district and the city. And I post updates to my website throughout the council term. While at the doors, I keep track of all the issues in my little books, right? I'm actually on my second book right now, and I've tracked over 100 issues, some big, some small, some will take a while. I try to work through them all. I have a track record of being responsive, hardworking, and dedicated. I have lived in the district for 24 years as a homeowner and taxpayer. I care about what happens in the neighborhoods. I have 16 years of experience trying to solve my constituents' problems. Thank you for your time.
Wow, thank you, Lisa. That's an impressive record. So the first question that you have 3 minutes to answer is what you're hearing from constituents in your district. What issue, as you're going around knocking on doors and campaigning for the election, what's the biggest issue that you're hearing, and what steps will you take to address this concern if you are reelected?
Right. So the biggest issue, it revolves around cars. It's cars going too fast. And because there's so much traffic, the roads are wearing out way too quickly. So as far as like the speeding goes, usually I go into the election and door to door, a few streets will be the problem childs, right? Like the few streets will say, please, please, we need traffic calming. And this time around, it's so many streets. It's so many streets. It's probably like 12 streets have said, you've got to do something about the traffic calming. So one thing I see is that we just revised our traffic calming policy to 2 years ago during COVID, and we've made it, instead of each councillor submitting 2 streets each, we're down to 1 street. And I now see that it's got to be, that policy has to be reopened. We're going to have to do more than just 1 street a year with the numbers that have been asking for it. Also, we've tried to create in Westwoods a pilot project to make it a community safety zone. And other areas other than Westwoods that also have, a school zone, they're asking, don't wait next year. Like, I want the safety zone tomorrow, like include us. And so again, that's our transportation department, and working on the policy to, roll out community safety zones as quickly as possible throughout the entire city. So about roads, what's happening is that some of them are wearing out faster than the water line. So what the city tries to do is partner up with Utilities Kingston, and first Utilities Kingston will go in and reline the water mains, followed by the city going in and doing a complete resurfacing of a particular neighborhood. Because of the traffic in the local neighborhoods, some of those streets are wearing out faster than the water mains. And so this means more road cuts. The city has doubled the budget for road repairs, 3 million to 6 million over the past 4 years. That definitely needs to continue because we need to do some road cuts to tide the streets over until Utilities Kingston comes in and does the water main relining.
Great, thank you. Um, well, the floor is open now for people on the call to either raise their hand or put a question in the chat or wave at me. And while we're waiting, Lisa, as we were discussing before the meeting began, if you're re-elected, you'll be the most senior person on council. And I was just curious about what advice you would give your new colleagues. What things have you learned over those 16 years that you think are really important?
Um, so to keep track of all the issues, there's so many issues coming towards you, like just going through the district, right? Like there's over 100 issues in here. It gets really hard to keep on track of everything. So you have to be super organized. So that's my advice to everybody. Write things down, keep track, because even though you think it's like, okay, yeah, I might have 2 weeks to work on this one issue, in 2 weeks time, you're going to have like, I don't know, 10 other issues that are going to come, and it's going to be really hard to get back to those issues you were first working on. So you have to be super organized. You have to really organize your email inbox. You have to really write things down. And the only benefit right now with the what we've learned in the pandemic is the ability to call staff through Zoom and through Teams. And that does make it a bit easier for us to communicate with staff, but start to get on those meetings with staff so you can start to make some headway with those issues. It just keeps coming on and coming on.
Thank you. One of the things that has come up a lot for me in the last few weeks is affordable housing. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the role of the municipality in developing affordable housing, which is, there's several years wait list, I think, to get on to rent geared to income housing, and affordability obviously is a huge issue. So I wonder if you could talk about that.
Exactly. So in the last 4 years of council, we did spend $22.8 million approving 239 affordable housing units. But for those affordable housing units, not all of them have started construction, or if they have just started construction, they're not finished yet. And I know we have like 1,000 people on the waiting list for affordable housing. So the city is, the provider of the funding coming from the province, for the affordable housing. It's important to use that money and use that money wisely and not sit on it, but definitely try to bring projects along. I know that right now we don't have a lot of nonprofit housing providers. Like we have Kingston Frontenac Housing Corporation, and we have home-based housing. We used to have town homes, and so anyway, home-based housing and Frontenac housing. They're, like they have a lot of projects on the go. We can't really give them even more projects, to work on, because they're almost at maximum capacity handling the projects that they are doing. It would be great if we had some other nonprofit housing providers that could also, we could give funding for them to do some project work. We tried to have a big variety. We just approved at council last month 1752 Bath Road, which is where McEwen Animal Hospital used to be, and it's going to be a 10-story apartment building, and there's going to be 28 affordable housing units in that 10-story apartment building. That's what we need to come along with. Our official plan says 25% of a development should be devoted to affordable housing, and 1752 Bath Road met that 25% requirement. And now if we could just get all of the apartments and condos coming online with that 25% criteria, that would really help.
Thank you, Lisa. We have a question in the chat from Paul Rose, who says, I'm in the Westbrook area, and we are hoping to improve traffic calming, hoping to get a small roundabout on the Westbrook Road when it's reworked in 2023. or a traffic camera. What are your thoughts on traffic cameras and how well they work?
Right. So those are probably the speed enforcement cameras that Paul's referring to. And so I am from Brampton, and Brampton has installed 40 of those cameras. They really work. They're in all of the school districts, which Westbrook Road would qualify for because they got Holsgrove Public School there. They really work because you do not know, like I'm talking from my own experience driving through Brampton so much, you don't know if they're set at 41, 42, 45 kilometers per hour. They have really slowed down the traffic, and Brampton was thinking about bringing in 20 more throughout the community. So I know that in 2019, council had a big vote for either the red light cameras or to look at the speed enforcement cameras. Council chose the red light cameras. Now staff, the transportation staff, have committed to bringing council a report back looking at the speed enforcement cameras, and I'm not sure how much money they'll recommend devoting to the cameras or where, how many cameras, but I look forward to that report because I do know some areas, even in Westwoods, where it's a community safety zone of 40 kilometers per hour, it seems that not all the drivers are obeying that. And I think speed enforcement cameras is the next step. For Westbrook Road, though, I haven't heard of the traffic circle idea, but I like it. I like it. Like the ones that we have on Catwoods Drive in Woodhaven, huge success. And so, yeah, I would like traffic circles.
I guess I'll pull out another question for you from my sleeve. I'm just wondering what you think the next steps are for Kingston in terms of action on the climate crisis.
Yeah, so the one thing is we have to try to save like more of the forest and the trees. So when we had the climate action plan written by a consultant, I think the consultant, I don't know if like their comment was made out of context or if they really did believe it, but like the consultant basically said that there's more things, there's better things that can be done by focusing on the buildings, and trees don't contribute that much to the climate change solution compared to focusing on the buildings. But the way I see it, like, yes, I have learned that, you know, buildings emit a lot of greenhouse gases, but for any building that you retrofit to, you know, try to reduce the greenhouse gases, if you're cutting down all the trees, you're never getting further ahead. And I think like having the consultants say that was such a detriment, because there's other counselors that have been re-quoting the consultants whenever planning applications have been coming that implicates a forest being cut down. I've heard now other counselors re-quote that consultant saying about the trees. And to me, you know, like I think the city can do a lot better, you know, by trying to work harder with the developers to, you know, save particular stands of trees, stands of forests for the development, so that not everything is clear cut and then a couple of trees planted in front of people's lawns and thinking that that's going to make up for the forest that had just been cut down. So I do think that we can do better from a climate crisis. Like when it comes to the trees, of course, we have a new program right now about in the neighborhoods, you know, if anyone living in a neighborhood wants to come up with a little action plan, you know, bring it to the city and the city will try to support that. And we also have, you know, grants available to retrofit your home to seal it off from emitting so many greenhouse gases. And that's all good. But, you know, right now we have really mature trees in Kingston, and we should be focusing on saving those trees instead of cutting them down and starting from zero each time.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions in the chat. First one from Joyce Hostin, who says, I noticed that new developments are all still being done with old school gray infrastructure. With the climate crisis, the increasing heat and floods, what can the city do to get new developments to use green infrastructure? For example, permeable paving instead of asphalt, preserving existing trees, preserving soil, etc., to help Kingston become more climate resilient?
Yes. So thank you, Elaine. So this is definitely a task for the Environment, Infrastructure and Transportation Committee, because this would be a policy, and we could have it at the EIT committee, right after Christmas to start working on this. It would be probably helpful for staff for them to have like an exemplary city that we could copy that has already figured this out, so that if staff need help, they're not going to recommend hiring a consultant to help. There probably are some cities that are good examples out there. I know from talking to Joyce in the past that there are cities that we can try to follow, and now is definitely the time. We want to try to save our existing trees and try out green infrastructure in every single new subdivision, especially with the amount of rains that we've been having. 2 weeks ago, we had torrential downpours. It looks like on Thursday of this week, another torrential downpour. In the winter time, right? We've had some really, one day in March where all the ground thaws out because it's suddenly 15 degrees and we have massive flooding with that warm up. Like, climate change has made things really unpredictable.
Thank you. Thank you to Joyce for that question. And a question from Pamela Cornell. Do you think lists of municipal election campaign donors should be made public before election day?
Yes, I would support that. I think that would be, that would be the sooner the better. Maybe, with online capabilities, that should definitely be available and to be posted.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pamela. And Peter Miller asks, what's a project or initiative another city council candidate has proposed during this election that you think is valuable and worth implementing?
So I heard when we had the Chamber of Commerce meeting last Tuesday morning that Mayor Patterson, he wants to develop a housing council, with our neighboring municipalities. So with Napanee, with Belleville, with Brockville, like what they're doing, and, kind of just seeing as we bring in Umicore, for example, which is going to be a huge company relocating into Loyalist Township, what housing policies is Napanee doing, Loyalist Township doing, we're doing, like, can we form like some cohesive plan, to help more housing development out. I could also see how it would be helpful too for our homelessness situation, and even like our affordable housing plans. If Napanee is doing something, can we also do the same? We often work with the same developers or in Loyalist Township as in Kingston, so it would just be sharing information. So I think that is definitely something that I look forward to.
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, and thank you, Lisa, for that. Paul Rose asks, do you know what the city has in the works with regards to moving away from combustion engine vehicles and toward all electric buses and other larger city vehicles to reduce our environmental impact?
So we do have 2 electric buses right now. They were really expensive, and we have to in our transit garage, right? It required a retrofit of of bringing in the infrastructure to support those 2 electric buses. So right now, I'm not aware of plans like to buy more buses. But I know that these 2 buses we have been really successful, and people have, really seemed interested in them. And when it comes to our capital budget after Christmas, that's one thing that we'll be looking into. I did read in today's newspaper about the electric ferries, right now with MTO, and it's like, what's the hold up with those? So I was happy to see, at least when we did order in our 2 electric buses, and we were one of the leaders in Ontario ordering those buses, that at least we have them in service. And I don't know what's going on with the electric ferries, but that was an interesting article.
Anyone else have questions for Lisa? Lisa, is there anything else that you would like to put on the agenda here this evening?
So I have heard a lot about the housing, it's on top of all of our minds. One thing that we need really are affordable rentals, rental units. I know that for the apartments that we've approved at planning committee, a lot of them have been turned into condos, and because most of them are downtown right along the waterfront, they have a premium price to go along with it. Like one housing project that I wish we could build tomorrow really are the 4 apartments that will be going at Frontenac Mall, because I don't think they will have the luxury price tag as the ones that are being built right now on Princess Street and Queen Street and along Ontario Street. I think those ones will be more affordable, and that's what we need, right? Like, we're really in an affordability crisis. You can't afford to pay $2,000, $2,400 a month for very long without things adding up. And how are our younger people ever going to then be able to save for a down payment for their house with that? I really want something more in the $1,500 range. And I know there's a lot of criticism for the councillors that voted against the tannery lands, but we got other pockets that would be great apartment development. So for instance, on Midland Avenue, we have between Loblaws and Walmart, we have that land right there. And I do know that there had been interest to put an apartment there, and that would still be of great interest to me to see that coming to planning committee at some time. I know too, to follow along of Frontenac Mall, right? There's the Cataraqui Mall, and the northwest corner of the Cataraqui Mall where Sears used to be, there's a lot of parking there. If that could turn into an apartment, or in the West End too, we're across from No Frills and Dollarama, there was a phase 2 of a commercial development 12 years ago, and we have so much commercial land that if that little strip instead could be rezoned for some mid-rise buildings, that would be a perfect fit for mid-rise, and give some more homes. So there's areas throughout Kingston, highway up Montreal Street, the west side, they would still have a nice view of the water on the one side, sunset on the other, without being a premium price, because it wouldn't be right on the water, and we could try to save that ribbon of life.
Lovely, thank you. There's a really nice message from Paul Rose in the chat, who says, I wanted to thank you for the informative updates your newsletter provides. I'm in a neighboring district, but find the information important and invaluable as to what's happening in our areas and the city as a whole. Thank you for your service.
No, thank you very much. I'm dying to send out more district updates, but I can't because it'll be seen as during the election time. And so if I get back in, I can't wait to send out more district updates.
That's great. And Pamela Cornell says, last week, a Kingston mobility bus was idling in front of my house. After 20 minutes, I asked the driver if he was waiting for someone. He said he was going to be doing a pickup around the corner in 15 minutes. I asked him to please turn off his engine. He said he couldn't without disabling his communication system. Can something be done about this?
Yeah, Definitely, I'll add it to my book. Like literally, I'll add it to my book and do it. What I'm hearing too is just such a coincidence because we just had our EIT transportation committee, and we were talking about this time in front of schools and how parents are often idling in front of the school and how we need bylaw to step up enforcement of that, as like even some parents leave their car on and are running their kids into the school and then coming back out, like very trusting in the West End. Very trusting, but anyway, yeah, idling. I'll take that as an action item, Pamela. Mhm.
I'd like to give you an action item for cyclists, because I cycle from my home in Strathcona Park to Queens as often as I can. And I love the bike lanes with the bollards on them, but they collect a lot of debris.
Mhm.
So there's lots of gravel and broken glass and dead squirrels, and it's it's especially hazardous this time of year because the weather is still nice enough to cycle, but it's accumulated over the summer, and then if it's darker, it gets dark early, so I find it's quite hazardous. So I would love it if the city would clean the bike lanes more often.
Yes. So I've actually sent that one in already because one of my
great.
constituents on Bridle Path Crescent, they're both active cyclists, and one of them works down at Queens, and all the way from the West End, he cycles to work, and he was saying the exact same thing, full of debris, right? And so I've sent that off to staff. I do know from the past, there is a cycle that Public Works does. They're supposed to clean out, but maybe just not often enough, or maybe they became short-staffed and have fallen behind. So yes.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Shelley asked in the chat how she can sign up for the community newsletter.
Right. So you can just send me an email at Lisa Osanek, all one word, @gmail.com. And I will add you, Shelley, because then I'll have your email address. Thank you.
Well, anybody else have questions for Lisa? Looks like crickets. So that's about half an hour, I guess.
I guess that we coalition organizers are trying to keep strictly scrupulous about impartiality, so we don't want to start throwing questions. Oh, Chris Hargreaves has his hand up though.
Chris, do you want to unmute yourself?
If we've run into the end of question time, it was mentioned earlier that Lisa is about maybe the longest serving councillor on the council at the moment. And I would just like to say thank you very much. I think you've done a great job, and thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. There's also a question in the chat from Peter Miller, who says, what would you say are your 3 highest priorities when elected to council?
So yes, first of all, getting the roads. I know Mona Drive, I know Woodside Drive, and I'm about to canvass in 2 days all throughout Lawrence Park. I know Waverly Street. So I know that Woodside and Mona are too young to have a new road surface put in because the water mains are not ready yet, but I want to see road cuts. I want to get those roads up to par, and likely Waverly Street too. It might actually make the 4-year infrastructure plan because the water mains were just done last year. So roads are are the one priority. My second priority is the traffic calming for the roads, for the residents on those streets that have said something's got to be done. It's another accident waiting to happen, and finessing the community safety zone areas in Westwoods, for example, of where the 40 kilometers signs start. That's my second priority for sure. And my third priority is I want to sit down with planning staff. Maybe it's an entire council meeting. Maybe it has to be in camera. I want council to be more proactive as to where the development happens. Like I was saying earlier, I understand, I know we need more housing. We need more apartments, rentals that are, you know, not luxurious at rent, that are more affordable for rent. And I want to see if the city can, you know, try to develop these areas, like I said, between Midland Avenue, between Loblaws and Walmart, and up Montreal Street on the west side where the abandoned train station is, right? Those lands. How can we do that so that we can still try to control our urban growth boundary and urban sprawl, and be more proactive to, you know, provide incentive? Maybe, I don't know, there's got to be tools that our planning department can use that I'm not aware of. That's what I want to sit down with them so that we can try to have more of an influence directing where we want to see development, instead of just always reacting, which might not be in the best locations. Those are my three priorities. Thank you for asking, Peter.
Thank you, Lisa. So if we don't have any other questions, we'll give Lisa 2 minutes to wrap up and give her final remarks. Oh, we have one more question.
Yes.
What about tree bylaws?
Yes. Okay. So Elsabe, thank you so much for asking that question. So with our tree bylaw that we brought out in like 2005 was a public meeting, and then it's been enacted since 2006. It only applies to lands up for development. It does not apply to lands that like my house, your house, right, that are privately owned. And I think that's where we have to take a look. You know, the GTA, Ottawa, Oakville, London, Ontario, Peterborough, Burlington, they now have tree bylaws that apply to all lands in Kingston. And it's not saying that you are not allowed to cut down a tree. You're still allowed to cut it down if it's sick, you know, and if it's in danger of falling over in one of these windstorms that we have. But what it's trying to do is just stopping people from randomly cutting down their trees because of an inconvenience of having the tree there. You know, like we've had some people during the pandemic who have moved from Toronto, and they're like, what? You have no rules about trees here? And then before you know it, they've cut down all the trees, totally taking advantage of the situation. And again, for climate change and, you know, to try to still make progress on our urban forest, which is only at, I think it was 22%, and it has not changed in over 10 years. We should be trying to increase the urban forest, not keep it steady state. And we know that Environment Canada recommends an urban forest of over 30% for a healthy watershed. We're at 22 and falling. And so we still have work to do. And so I think that for tree bylaws is something that planning staff know we need to do, and they were going to consider it in 2023 when we start doing our next 5-year official plan updates.
Thank you. Lisa, how about you get 2 minutes to wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for their comments and asking the questions. I enjoy this. Normally, I don't enjoy these sort of things, right? I'm more of a one-on-one person. I just want to be honest, right? I find these things frightful. But thank you for all the questions and being so nice. And I do work very hard, and I would really appreciate being reelected. I know there's a lot of pressures right now on our urban growth boundary, trying to find land for new housing. And I just want to be in there to try to still protect the green spaces that we still have, go higher instead of wider, have more medium rise, apartments and high rises where there are, again, the parking lot at Frontenac Mall is perfect. Other locations like that in pockets across the city doing smart infill. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you everyone for your questions.